Welcome to the evening edition of the Coffee Chat Show. We haven't done this in a while, you guys. The last time we did this was the car guy. It was Justin when we used to do the car show at night. Well, these guys aren't mechanics. They are my friends and my coworkers. They work with me at Delta Hire. This is Karen and Steven. And tonight we're going to talk about how this came about and what happened is I saw another round of 10,000 layoffs, I think, for Microsoft. I think it was it was Meta. It was Meta. Tracy's with us. Hi, Trace. And so it occurred to me that these guys are a wealth of knowledge. I'm a wealth of knowledge in regards to mindset and looking at things from a positive perspective and using principles of positive psychology. And these guys can help with some interview tips and resume and how to show up well on LinkedIn. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're hoping that anyone who is found themselves out of work, or if you're even looking for new work, or if you want to change your job, or you're just finding yourself on the job market, either you expected to, or it's unexpected. You can tell in the wells at the end of the day. We thought we might be able to offer some help. So I'm going to let Karen introduce herself and then Steven introduce himself. They'll just say hi and tell you maybe 3 facts about themselves that they think you'd like to know. Then I'll jump into some mindset stuff, and then I'll turn it over to Steven, and then we'll turn it over to Karen. So Tracy is with us manning the comments. So if anybody has a question for Karen or Steven, you can drop it into the comment section and we'll see it. Okay, Karen, why don't you introduce yourself to my audience?
I'm Karen. This is my first Facebook Live video, so.
Wow.
Yeah, not nervous or anything. No. I have been with the team for a little over a year. I've been in HR for a few years and recruiting for a few years. Before that, I was in the hospital. I've done so many things: hospitality, sales, PR, done a lot. So I've got a lot of knowledge of different industries. And I have a dog. His name's Bagel. He's a beagle. And I live in South Florida. And I'm the palest person in Florida.
Bagel the beagle. I love
Bagel
her dog.
Beagle. So if he barks tonight, I apologize.
That's all right. We like him. Janet's with us. Hey, Janet. Good to see you. I hope you had a good time in Florida. Steven, how about you?
Hello, everybody. My name is Steven. I live in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I've been with Delta Hire for just over 2 years now. Been in recruitment for about 5. Quick fact that you can't tell from video, but I am 6'10", which leads everyone usually asks me how tall I am or if I play basketball. So we'll just cross those off the list. And I'm 6'10". I did play basketball, but happy to be here with everybody and share some tips. Hopefully we can help you out.
Nice. All right, Janet. Oh, Janet lives in Michigan. Nice. I didn't even realize. Why do I know that, Janet, but I guess I don't know it. There's like the things that you know, and then the things that you know that you don't know. All right, so let's talk about mindset. If you suddenly found yourself without a job, if you got the rug pulled out from under you, if you are unhappy in your present job and you want to switch jobs, whatever the case might be, usually let's just talk about if you got relieved from your job and you didn't expect it. That usually brings up fear, could be flat out terror of not having enough money or not knowing how you're going to pay for stuff, not knowing how you're going to find a new job, whatever the case may be. So like we talk about all the time on Coffee Chat, the most important thing is for you to maintain or regain your place of peace, right? Because if your mindset isn't there, and if you're coming from a fear-based thinking, no possibilities are going to find you, right? We talk about the Peanuts character, and he's like the doom and gloomer, and he's got that dust cloud around his head. And so what happens is when you're panicking and you're fearful and you go down the rabbit hole of thinking of all the what ifs, then you're creating this sort of energetic field around you, right? And the law of, we know by the law of attraction, and now our science-backed friend, positive psychology, tells us that you have to be happy before the circumstances to be happy about will find you. So it's really important for you to come from a positive place. And I recognize that if you just lost your job unexpectedly, there could be some, valid fears there, right? I get that. So what there is to do is to pick a couple of affirmations for yourself and write them down on index cards. The index card exercise, my favorite thing. Start sticking them on sticky notes, have index cards, like start putting positive statements all around you, right? The job that I'm seeking is also seeking me. I know what to do when I do it. Every day in every way, things are getting better and better. Really important for you at this point to be bookending your days, like we talk about all the time, setting yourself up in the morning with some intentionality, what you want to see happen for the day, what outcomes you want to see manifested. And then you've got to get into action, which these guys will help us with, right? You've got to have some action steps. But before you can start tweaking the resume, putting yourself on LinkedIn, going on interviews, we want to make sure that you've got that positive mindset. We want to make sure that you're not putting yourself out there from a place of fear and panic, right? Because if that's how you're commenting on LinkedIn or on Facebook or responding to ads or going on interviews, nobody's going to touch you with a 10-foot pole. Nobody likes that energy of panic, right? It's very clingy. It's very, very reactive. So want to get you in a positive frame of mind to realize that possibility exists, and also maybe come from a place that there's good in everything. And if the universe shuts a door, the universe will open a window or create another door. So try to just reframe, right? We talk about that all the time on Saturday mornings. This is an opportunity for you to reframe a layoff or a sudden job loss as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to make a career change. It's an opportunity to do something different. It's an opportunity to perhaps have a job that makes you better money. Maybe it allows you to work from home, whatever the case may be. So we'll come back to this at the very end, but just really think about a couple practices that you could put in place that when you wake up in the morning, you're reading some affirmations, you've got some sticky notes around your desk, you're maybe writing a glory story about the perfect job finding its way to you, the amazing interviews you're going to go on, the wonderful resume responses you're getting. Put yourself in that place so that possibility can find you and solutions can find you. When you come from that negative, fearful place, you create that dust cloud around your head. You keep everything away from you at that point. Nothing can find you. And we want to get you in a place where possibilities and opportunity can find you. Stephen is going to give you some pointers on how to clean up your resume. If you have not had to do a resume in a long time, he's going to give you some tips about that. And then he's going to also talk to you about LinkedIn and how you can optimize kind of your presence on LinkedIn to get noticed. And he's also going to mention how to respond to people on LinkedIn or respond to job ads. And then we'll go over to Karen, who's going to tell you how to show up brilliantly in an interview. All right, Stephen.
Awesome. Thanks for those tips, Noelle. Definitely stuff that I know we practice on a daily basis. But yeah, obviously, it's not ideal to find yourself in a situation where you've been laid off or let go, or even just when you kind of decide it's time to move on and look for a new job. But really, one of the biggest things that is to your advantage is your resume. This is what everyone asks for when you apply for a job, when you're networking with someone you know. They're like, oh, hey, can I see your resume? Can you send me your resume? Or you have to upload your resume to a job posting and things like that. So this is really ultimately your best line of attack when you're reaching out and looking for jobs. So you really want, first off, you want to make sure that your resume is clean and concise. The first thing that almost everyone looks for is the formatting. So you don't want to have 10 different fonts or different shapes and sizes, and I know a lot of people put their picture on your resume, but that's not really anything that is necessary. You want it to be as clean, easy to read and kind of concise as possible. I know that
Someone's asking, Stephen, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
sure.
Are the most effective resumes ones with bullet points or paragraphs like at the top? And maybe you were going to get to that, but just so you can cover that.
Yeah, great question. So really, when most people kind of receive a resume or see a resume, you don't have a lot of time to catch that reader's eye. So especially like hiring managers or anyone looking through job applications, you have probably 10 to 15 seconds to really grab their attention. So first off, you obviously want to have like your name. It's also good practice to kind of link your LinkedIn profile and like where your location is on the top of your resume. And then you want to, I see another question coming in here. One page on the front, the best.
Is the one page format. You know how they tell you make your resume one page?
If you can, yes, trying to make it at one page is definitely a better option to go. But the big thing is like a lot of people like to list a lot of like various skills, like whether it's like Microsoft Office or software that you're using, which really, if that's what you have at the top of your resume, you're not letting the hiring manager or anyone looking at your resume know like what you can do. So you want to have your name, LinkedIn profile, location, and then if you can have like 2 to 3 sentences of really kind of an executive like summary or just kind of a professional summary highlighting some of your top accomplishments or like what you're looking for, because those are the things that are going to draw in a hiring manager and really, hey, this directly relates to this job. Let me see what else they've done. And they're going to spend a little bit more time. So those are probably like the biggest points with your resume. And then when you're moving into your professional like experience, you want to have the company name, how long you were there, and then the position you held. And then when you move into this section of your resume, this is where you'd want to move into bullet points. So it kind of separates each of the different like responsibilities that you held and did in that position.
So at the top, I have a question. So at the top
Yeah.
of in that top part of your resume, are you better off to, like you said, a couple sentences to highlight your skills or highlight like your what you're good at, like I am a blah 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 blah, or is it better to highlight a skill or to highlight I don't know, to highlight, you know how some of them say I'm looking for a blah 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 position, like is that really the best thing to put at the top, or is it better to put some, like you said, accomplishment or accolades or something?
So with kind of like the professional or like executive summary, this is you trying to really kind of get the hiring manager interested in you professionally. So like you want to really kind of give them a few highlights of like maybe what you did, like a big accomplishment from your previous position that would like make you desirable to another company. Because ultimately, if they see something relevant, where if you're like a sales professional, if you exceeded sales targets for the last like 3 or 4 years consecutively, that's going to make you desirable to that hiring manager or for that job. So like ultimately, and these are things that you can shift and change depending on the job or position that you're applying for as well. Because again, the most relevant information to the job you're applying for is what's going to get noticed.
Okay. How about if someone's been out of the job market for a long time? Let's say let's say they were raising their children and now they are back in the job market. And obviously, maybe their work history has a big space in it, or somebody's work history has a big space in it. Some people just didn't have to work during COVID, so they have a big space or whatever. If there are big spaces, or if there's a period of time where you like, is there a way to come back after that to put something up there or something in the resume that, I don't know, shows something, or a way to do that that's not as bad as another way? Or
so I know sometimes we see like if someone has worked contract jobs, or some candidates will kind of include like why they left or moved on from a position. Ultimately, it's kind of tough to get past that bias of like, hey, there's a gap here. This person has moved around a lot. Like ultimately, the best way to get around that is to be able to talk to someone, let them know the situation so they can understand and make a judgment call. Be like, hey, is this person like really genuine? They fell into some bad situations. I think like with COVID from like 20 to 22, there's a little bit more leeway and flexibility now than there may have been in the past, just because we all know we went through the same thing and a lot of people were affected. Even now too, with like the mass layoffs, that's another thing where you're not necessarily going to be as looked down upon or passed over because of that, because we've all gone through these similar things.
There's our cover letter question that I knew would come.
Yeah. So as far as like cover letters, it's not something that we see very often. We do see it more for like executive level, like C-suite type of candidates where they've been working for like 15 or 20 years and they're the candidates who don't have a one-page resume. They have an extensive resume of things they've done. So having that kind of like cover letter or executive like summary in like a 1 to 2 paragraphs, just kind of, again, similar to what you would put at the top of your resume, but a little bit longer. Those are things that you can highlight. And this is a good thing where if you have been out of work, you can kind of highlight like, hey, it was best for my family for me to be at home and taking care of the kids. But now that they're in daycare and back in school, I have more time. I'm ready to get back in the workforce and talk about like, yeah, I'm ready. I want to take on challenges and things like that. So you want to kind of talk about like your motivations and things like in those paragraphs, but not necessary for every position that you apply to in this kind of like day and age.
Okay. How about Christy's saying the video stopped, but I have a feeling that might be for her because Tracy would have texted me. So I think we're good. Okay. And I'm not getting any indication from BeLive that we've got a problem. So we will just proceed. Okay. How about anything else to say about the resume?
I think unless anyone has any specific questions, that's kind of all I had to cover on your resume.
Okay, and we'll at the end of this, we'll give our email. We'll give Stephen and Karen's email addresses, so that if you do have questions after the fact, you know, if you end up watching the recording of this later on, that you can still ask questions. All right, how about LinkedIn? First of all, where's the best place for people to start showing up, looking for work, or interacting with people? It is LinkedIn, right?
Yep. Yeah, okay. LinkedIn is definitely, outside of your resume, going to be your best source for looking for jobs, networking, connecting with people. And ultimately, if you do find yourself looking for a new job or you've been laid off, like the biggest thing is to really utilize your network. The age-old saying of it's not what you know, it's who you know is even more relevant in this day and age, because there are a lot of people in the market looking for jobs. And if you know somebody and they can make an introduction or a referral for you, like that's going to really help you out in your search. But even before you kind of like revamp your resume, jump on LinkedIn, after kind of like getting your mindset right and kind of being in that positive mindset where you can like start looking for a job, you have to understand, or you have to like narrow down what you want to do next. Do you want to stay in the same field or the same type of position that you were doing previously? Do you want to shift and maybe go after a different career path? Like before you can get started, that's where you have to start, because otherwise anything you do it's not going to be focused, it's not going to be directed, and you're just going to be spinning your wheels in a bunch of different ways, and you're not going to end up where you want to be, which is back in the workforce, having a job that you're excited about and happy to kind of have. But with LinkedIn, definitely the largest like networking platform that we have. So I mean, again, if you've there's a lot of like great tools and features that they have built into the platform. I know it's maybe people think it's a little bit tacky, but make sure you put up your open to work green circle banner, because then without even looking at a profile, someone knows like, hey, this person is either interested in making a change or they need to find a job. And then from there, is where you can kind of like, if you're laid off, as opposed to having like your title, you can put what you're looking for in a position once you've narrowed that down. But one of the big things with the open to work sign is you can put what you're looking for, but then anyone who comes across that, they can send you a direct message, even if you're not connected to that individual. And then you're going to get a notification of like, hey, I'm interested to talk. And then you can kind of start conversations from there.
You got a question there. So yeah, if you've been at your current job for a long time and have never used LinkedIn, do I just look for previous bosses or coworkers? And maybe let's just speak to someone who's never used LinkedIn for a second. If you haven't used LinkedIn, there's a couple of good books on Amazon. One is LinkedIn for Dummies. No offense to anyone, but it's actually a really simple, and also there are like there's free like on YouTube, and there's lots of people that put out content about how to build a LinkedIn profile and things like that. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile and you need to have one, you can definitely email one of us and we can give you some resources to go look at. Tracy and I are happy to do that. These guys are pretty busy, but Tracy and I we're happy to do that to help. So let us know. And I'm not sure about what Christy means about does she just look for previous bosses, but
yeah, I'm not quite sure what that
Maybe
yeah,
like who she would connect with.
Yeah, I think so.
Just
That's
everyone?
what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely you can connect with previous coworkers or bosses. But then again, when it comes to just like sending out connections, like if you're interviewing, you want to make sure you're sending connection requests to anyone that you do interview with. And then also too, if you're applying to jobs, like going and connecting with anyone who looks like they might be in HR, or maybe they're a manager for a position above like what you're wanting to apply for. The more connections you have, the more LinkedIn is going to open up a network for content for you to see, jobs that are going to be posted, and it's going to make your job in like looking through the platform and scrolling through jobs and connecting with people a lot easier. But just kind of back to some LinkedIn basics about like one of the biggest things again is like what is your presence and what do you want to exude. So like that starts like with your picture. It's cell phone cameras are pretty impressive these days. I'm pretty sure we all have a blank wall somewhere in our house. If not, go to your neighbor's friend's house, have them take a picture of you dressed up with no background behind you, just because having a good picture where it's not a selfie is going to make a big difference.
So don't post a picture in your pajamas. Is that
Or
what
your car.
Right.
or on your sofa depressed eating pizza because you got laid off. Don't post that picture, you guys.
Right. But then just some other things too, like I know there's the open to work banner, but if there's a job that you want to apply for and they maybe have certain skills or software programs that are required for that job, LinkedIn Learning has a lot of like free courses and tools that you can take.
Right.
And it's going to show that like you're dedicated. These courses aren't like week-long things. Usually you can do them in a half hour, maybe two. But then that's showing that you're dedicated to like, hey, I don't have this skill, but I just took this course and I'm able to kind of like, I can apply this to a job. And then.
Okay. So also it's a great time for them if they do have downtime, right, to start learning stuff to expand their knowledge base for what's possible. I know Karen, I know we have some people that have done a bunch of free Google training. We have some people that we've taken on for admin. So I know Karen found a bunch of free Google training. I know HubSpot has a bunch of free trainings on all kinds of different things. So again, if you find yourself, if you're out of work, if you're not in the best headspace, if you do need some assistance on where you can find free resources, we'll put something together. And I will throw it up on the site for Coffee Chat, but also, you can email us and we'll get you some information. We have a question from Cheryl. Did you say the open to work banner allows you to message people you're not connected to?
So it doesn't allow you to send messages to people you're not connected to, but people can directly message you if they're not connected.
Let's talk for a second about overall profile and attitude on social media, including your LinkedIn. Like, so if you're posting, like, stay away from the negativity, stay away from, poor me, I have such a terrible experience. If you're a drinker and a partier, stay away from that stuff. That doesn't usually go on LinkedIn, but look, we are all hiring managers for our own, company. It's one of the first places we go. We're checking out everything that we can find about you online, and we're checking out all of your social media. And you want to present yourself in a way that you want to be seen. So Stephen, can you say a few things about that and what they could maybe be posting on LinkedIn that would show them to be the way that they want to be seen out there?
Yeah, so it's when it comes to like posting content, I would say like if you have read like certain articles that maybe are relevant to the industry you're in or want to get into, or a specific job, like that's a good place where you can easily share that article and maybe share some of your own thoughts along with that article. But I would say like if you're laid off or you're kind of like in that job search, before like focusing on like posting like a ton of different content, I would say like commenting on jobs that are posted or other people's posts that you like find interesting and like actually engaging, and not just like saying something like, I need a job, like here's my resume, or like let me send you my resume, like type things, like actually like engaging, sharing your thoughts. Like people are going to notice that you're like genuinely interacting with what they took time to post on LinkedIn. But then like the more you're like posting and like, or commenting on posts, liking posts, that's showing you're more active on the platform. And then other people who are connected to those people will see that like, oh, that so-and-so commented on this. This is like a very good point. Like then they'll maybe go and look at your profile, and then they would see like, hey, so it's just like I don't know, it expands. Like the more active you are in commenting, liking posts and things like that, it's going to be probably a little bit more beneficial than going and just putting a bunch of posts, especially if you're new to LinkedIn, where you don't have like an extensive network or people that you're connected to outside of like being in the talent acquisition or like recruitment world. Unless you're like in like, I don't know, like a content like focused industry or position, not a lot of people are really connected to a ton of people on LinkedIn, maybe 300-400 people. So like the more people you can kind of interact and engage with, the better off you will be in your search when you're kind of like looking for stuff.
So could we safely say that looking to add value, in your comments and on LinkedIn is a great way to get yourself seen and potentially heard? And could we also say that if you are out of work and you're feeling frightened and pathetic, how much time should you spend every morning after you do your, after you center yourself and you've got your mindset right? Would you recommend a certain amount of time on LinkedIn just going around, looking to see what's there, looking to see what you could potentially comment on, looking to see where you could add value with your thoughts? What would you say, Stephen? 30 minutes a morning to just keep that, given that everything is momentum, guys, right? Like if you're applying momentum to be searching for a job and adding value out there, then value will in turn find its way to you to be added to you. So what do you think? What could we recommend to people?
I would say probably at least like 30 minutes to an hour. Okay. Just because if everything that you like see, it's not all going to be right in front of you. You might have to type in a few like keywords or searching for a different like position or looking for companies. So, I mean, I would say at least a minimum like 30 minutes to an hour every day. Some other tips too, like when it comes to applying to jobs, sending messages, like there's a ton of people out there applying for like the same jobs. If you're connected to a hiring manager and you send them a message, like this is where you really have to kind of like set yourself apart. So like if you see a job posted, before applying to that job, I would sometimes it'll show who the hiring manager is for that job. I would probably go and send a connection to that hiring manager with just maybe even a little introduction note before applying to the job, and then wait a day and go like mark down. So like another good thing too is to track the jobs that you're applying to, either in a Word document, an Excel sheet. So that way you can go back and you can look and be like, hey, this is a job, the company I looked at, these are the people I connected with, and these are who I like sent messages to. So that way you can kind of track that. But like if you had just applied to any job on LinkedIn, your information and like resume is going to be included with, in the current state of things, probably at least 500 to 1,000 other applicants at a minimum. And as a hiring manager, they're not going to get through every one of those applicants and resumes. So then let's say you connect with a recruiter like myself or Karen, and we have a relationship with that company, but you've put your information to their application. We're not able to technically represent you for a period of 6 to 12 months. It varies company to company, but like I would use applying to like an actual job posting as kind of like your last resort. After you send a connection request to the hiring manager or a few other people in that company, maybe see if you know anyone else who works at that company that can maybe refer you in. After you've connected with the hiring manager, that would be a good time to like send a brief summary and like attach your resume. Be like, hey, I'm interested in this job, but I didn't want to just apply and get lost in the shuffle with 1,000 other people. And you're kind of setting yourself apart. But again, you don't just want to send a message, be like, hi, here's my resume, I'm looking for a job, because they're getting just as many applications as they're getting that many messages. So again, it's about kind of like setting yourself apart, being a little bit different when you are kind of sending those messages and kind of reaching out to people.
So anything you can do to differentiate yourself basically and stand out and show up. We've got, let's see, we've got a question. Do the messages to people you're not connected to go into the other folder versus the focus folder? I think so. And then
if you're sending an in-mail, they would go into the other
folder. Okay. And then Tracy asks, what if someone does not want it to be known that they're looking for a job? No banner. Is there another way to show themselves as open to work on LinkedIn?
Yep. So there is. So like most
stealth mode.
You can't. So like there is a setting that you can turn on that will notify recruiters that you're open to work, but it won't allow your manager to see unless they have access to like the recruiter version of LinkedIn, which helps support like recruiting firms, recruiters in being able to help you guys find your jobs. But even just kind of like on the topic of reaching out to the hiring managers, it's also good practice to like find recruiters that specify or like specialize in either the industry that you're currently in and want to continue pursuing a path in that industry, or if you're looking to make a shift. There are specialized recruitment firms out there, and then those are the individuals that are going to have probably the most connections with clients, or even just other industry professionals. And I know like with us, like we know people from like past companies that we work for. So it's like ultimately like we want to help you as we can, but also too, it's like if you're like you're a sales rep and you're reaching out to a technology recruiter who only places software engineers, like it's not like for them to then, they don't have a network of clients or even industry professionals that they can kind of reach out to. So like being a little bit more focused with recruiters who are kind of like talk about being specialized in a certain specific industry. Certainly not every recruiter is specialized or has a specific niche, but most recruiters will have at least some sort of specialty, especially if they're in the industry long enough. I mean, with what we do at Delta Hire, we have we can cover any industry because we have a diverse background of recruiters, but we all kind of have a little bit of our own specialty where that's like our bread and butter, where we have the most contacts and connections with. So just doing your research and kind of like looking at their profile and seeing what they specialize in, then that's going to help you out as well.
Awesome. All right, before we jump to Karen, so what would be what's your top 3, Stephen, for our folks? What are your top 3 most important things for them to do on the daily if they have found themselves without work, looking for a job?
Yeah, so I mean, again, like network, reach out to after revamping your resume, getting your LinkedIn and profile picture set, then reaching out to your current like personal network, but then like beyond LinkedIn, like looking at jobs that are posted within the industries or positions that you're looking for, and just kind of like network, comments, and yeah, kind of take things from there.
Okay. All right, you guys. So we're gonna jump to Karen. I'm gonna put Stephen's email address in the chat. And if you have other questions that we weren't able to speak to live, you can feel free to email Stephen. You can also email me, and I will get your questions to Stephen. And we are happy to help. We are doing this because I feel concerned for all the people that found themselves all of a sudden out of work. And so whatever we can do to help, whatever information that we can offer, whatever assistance we can be. All right, Karen, what should people do and not do either in a live interview or in an online interview? Just so you know, a lot of what Karen does for us is she conducts a lot of interviews. She's conducted a lot of first level interviews in her time, and she now conducts a lot of final interview. Well, what they hope is a final interview. Mm-hmm. And then Karen decides whether they pass or no pass. So she's going to fill you in.
It's funny. I used to be the worst interviewer. Like notoriously, my resume would get, when I worked at Marriott and Ritz-Carlton, I was applying to other companies and hotels, and they were like, oh, she's got a great background, let's bring her in. And I always bombed. I was so bad. Probably for the first 5 years of interviewing, I was so bad at it. And I know why. I overshared. I drifted off. I rambled, because when I get really nervous, I started rambling. Or I wasn't there for the right reasons. Like, and I'll tell you a cute story, and then I'll go into the do's and the don'ts. But one time I was interviewing for a Marriott in New York City, and I was at Marriott in Maryland, and I kept saying, I want to be in New York. I want to be in New York. And that was like, they didn't want to hire me, right? Because it was the only reason I wanted to be there. So the first don't is be there for the right reasons. Like, why are you an asset to the company, not why the company is an asset to you? So that's number 1. But the do's and the don'ts, first, the research. Do some research, whoever you're interviewing with. When I interviewed with Noelle a year ago, I genuinely, A, wanted to know who I was interviewing with. And B, I read just a couple articles, right? It took me like 15 minutes to read a couple of her old articles. And it's not that I necessarily even wanted to brag or tell her that I read them before as like a goody two-shoes. But I wanted to, and if I did want to bring it up, right? Because they know you're interested. You're actually there for the right reasons. So research is very important. Another thing I learned over the years is be confident and be kind to yourself. Like, there's a reason why they brought you into interview, right? You were selected. And I think what a lot of it was before, when I used to interview, it would take up my whole day, and I would think about it all day long. Oh my gosh, I have this interview. What am I going to say? It's like going on a date. What am I not going to say? And if you really think about it, that interviewer, this is a very small part of their day. Like, you're not that important to them. They have, 40 other things going on. So if you kind of put yourself in that perspective and think, okay, this isn't that big of a deal. I'm not going to bomb. If I bomb, it's not the end of the world. That really changed my mindset and realizing not to focus on it so much time before. Another tip I do, if I am really nervous, especially when I've been laid off in the past and I'm like, I need to pay my bills. So like, I need this job, is I always used to either take an interview on my lunch break. If I was still actively working, but if I was laid off and I really needed the job, I would call like a family member or a friend on the way to the interview, and I wouldn't talk about the interview. I would completely take my mind off of what I was about to go into, because there was something that made me less nervous and more of, okay, like, don't practice right before you go to the game, right? You practice days prior. You know, basketball players don't practice 30 minutes before the game starts. So that was a big thing too. And that changed a lot of how I interviewed. But once I got there, it was the confidence, knowing that, and I think Noelle and I were talking about this the other week, especially with the newer generation, like, they interview us. Like,
right?
It's like the tables have turned. Like, why should I work for you? Or so that's kind of, you know, some of it can be extreme, but some of it that's pretty noteworthy, right? You can be interviewing them, and that can you know, bring some confidence. But going with resumes is print out a resume. If you're doing an in-person interview, print out a resume, even if it sounds super old school. A lot of people don't anymore, and I think it speaks volumes. If you're doing a Zoom interview, it's a couple different ways. I would send your resume email to whoever's on the calendar invite prior. Obviously, if you're working with a recruiter or somewhere like Delta Hire, they do that legwork for you, but you'll just confirm that they've done that on your end. What you don't want to do is show up to an interview, whether it's Zoom or in person, and they're like, I don't have your resume. And then it's the first 5 minutes of trying to find your resume. And, you know, you kind of want to ease into it. Once you start the interview,
what about references, you guys? Like, if you're going in person, do you bring the old school, you used to bring a sheet, you know, with your references and their contact information. Is that, I'm dating myself now, is that still a thing? Do you include that? Do you wait till you're asked?
I think it matters. I mean, Stephen, I'd love for you to kind of chime in on that, but like, for what I do and the way I interview is I ask for them regardless. So if they're already on the resume, fine. But I don't think of anyone different if they don't already have them on.
Okay. Stephen.
Would you kind of agree with that, Stephen?
Yeah. Whether it's like a first interview or a final, I don't think actually bringing your references is going to be a deal breaker for anyone that you're interviewing with.
Okay.
And usually, I think nowadays, at least more or less, references from like a client perspective, they're usually not going to ask references until they've done all the interviews and they want to make an offer to a candidate, or they're going to be before the final interview and they're pretty sure they know that they're going to offer the candidate. Then they'll kind of start to do references at that point, whether they're asking the candidate for the references themselves, or if like you're working with a recruiter and they're representing you, then like you would give them to the recruiter and things like that. So it's not something that you have to have prepared for your first interview.
Cool.
And if it is, like, they'll ask you for it. So it's not something that you're going to be caught off guard, like, oh, I didn't bring my references or didn't have them on hand.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Going to Christy's question, I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat it. Yeah, there are a lot of places that hire younger, but it's not because of an age thing. It's because they don't want someone who's, you know, some companies, places don't want to hire someone smarter than them. And obviously you don't want to work there who does that, but I've worked in places like that. I think that it's also a salary concern, even before they even interview and understand what your salary requirements are. If you're more seasoned, I had an interview during COVID to be the front desk person at a med spa. And I spent the last 10 years in corporate America in New York. And I know I wasn't hired because they were like, she's too old and too seasoned and she's going to leave in 3 months. So I think, Christy, to answer your question, you know, that's where the executive summary or a cover letter does really help in coming in, of why are you applying to a job that may be more entry than, you know, what it looks like, and addressing the elephant in the room. I like to address the elephant in the room head on, first conversation.
This team we don't sugarcoat things.
No.
These guys are no different than me. This is my management. This is half of my management team.
Yeah.
They don't sugarcoat anything.
And that's how you should do it when you're applying and interviewing as well. I interviewed a gentleman yesterday, entry-level role. He's about, 52, 55 years old, I think. And he told me head on. He said, listen, I'm going to be older than a lot of people that you were interviewing. You know, I'm not looking to advance my career at this point. I want something stable. I want good benefits. I want to stay there for the rest of my time. And we hired him, and I appreciate his honesty.
Nice.
Because those are the questions I would have. Is, are you going to
Yeah.
leave me in 5 years when your Medicare kicks in, and are you, whatever
Right.
that is. So that was helpful. But I think going back to the actual interview, one thing I really want to touch on that I learned from Marriott is the STAR method and how that really transformed how I answer questions. So the STAR method is situation, task, action, and result. And it's a way that you answer your questions. And if you're like me that needs a format, because I'll ramble, I'll go on and then it won't make any sense, and then I'll somehow end up at the point. So I needed something like really structured. And the STAR method's great for that. So to give you an example, if someone said, let's say it's customer service, tell me about a time that you helped a disgruntled customer. And so the situation, whatever the situation is, task can kind of be the same thing. Action, obviously, is what you did. Super important with action is what you did, not what your team did, not what your boss did, what you did. And then result is what everyone misses. Everyone forgets to tell the result. The result could be the customer stayed and rebooked a stay, and we gained, $5,000 worth of additional revenue. The customer didn't write the bad Yelp review and instead was taking nice photos. Whatever the result was, everyone always forgets that. So it's really important to make sure that the action is you and the result, say if there's any result behind it. And if it's a bad result, you can say that too and how you learn from it. But the STAR method is really helpful. And you can Google STAR methods. Marriott uses it. Hilton uses it. A lot of major Fortune 100 companies use it. And just, my suggestion is make sure you have a couple of them on hand. Like I would probably write out 4 STAR questions before your interview. Even if they don't ask it, my interviews particularly, I don't use the STAR method, but a lot of bigger companies do. But at least you'll have a structure of how to answer something. And I think, once obviously the interview is done, the question side is where everyone always trips up on. If you Google how to have a great interview, it always says ask great questions. Make sure you're asking questions that you actually want to ask and not questions that you Googled. It's very obvious. If you don't have any questions because it was all covered, which happens to me a lot because I cover a lot during my interview process, the best way to navigate that if all your questions got answered is simply, well, a lot of my questions got answered. We went over this, and this. So at least they knew that you had a question, but it got answered. But I mean, anything. Like, my suggestion is ask questions, but ask them smart and not just asking to ask. Mm-hmm. And then Chrissy said, technology skills are outdated. Can it be intimidating when you think about switching jobs? Rocket sail with new avenues and social media can seem daunting. Yeah, it can be.
This is where some of that free, some of these free classes come in handy. Like you can polish skills. We had somebody, we had a mom come back to work. She's actually doing some stuff for us on our team, and Karen sent her to Google School for all kinds of free, to learn to polish her skills, because that's what she needed to do. She needed to polish her tech skills. Hell, I need to even polish mine, but these guys help me out, so they feel bad for me when I don't know how to use my phone or my computer.
Like, LinkedIn can be really overwhelming. Indeed, if you're not actively dying to get a new job, but you're curious what's out there, I think Indeed in general is a much user-friendly, not so tech-based platform. And it obviously depends on your industry, but Indeed may be a good start for you as well, Christy, if you are looking to branch elsewhere, but the thought of making a LinkedIn profile seems overwhelming. That would be my suggestion.
What, how about appearance, Karen, both on virtual and showing up for an interview? Like, some people think that doesn't matter so much anymore. I say it does. I know we've had some interviews of people taking interviews from the bathroom or on their sofa laying down. So why don't we speak to that?
I had a guy take an interview shirtless camping. He was on a camping.
It's no joke, you guys. We actually had someone take an interview for a job that we were offering in the They were in the bathroom, in the bathroom. Not even joking. Yeah.
It's weird to say. I guess I have to say it. Obviously, wear, a nice what Steven looks like, Noelle, myself.
Wear some clothes.
No distractions. Make sure you test the internet beforehand. That's a big thing. Make sure that you test the internet beforehand.
Yeah.
If you didn't get the calendar appointment for the Zoom invite, I would proactively reach out to whoever was going to send it to you. Like I've had 2 different situations in the last week where someone said, "Oh, I didn't get the calendar appointment." Well, why didn't you? You know,
Why didn't you say anything?
Yeah. And in person, I like to dress in solids, and I'm old school like that. I like to wear heels and dress in solids, and I still wear a suit jacket for the most part. I don't normally wear jeans on a first interview. Obviously on Zoom, it's quite different. I'm just old school. I don't like the crazy colors and all that stuff. Hats I don't really love, but I keep it pretty simple.
Okay.
And then the last thing I really want to touch on, which I think is becoming a dated art, are the thank you emails that I'm getting less and less of. Even a 3, you don't really have to go into a whole thing. Like, I'm going to be honest, as the interviewer side, I don't really read. I read the thank you email, but like I don't read the paragraphs of it. I've probably moved on to my 3rd interview since you. But even just a quick thank you goes a long way, and I think it's becoming a forgotten art.
Yeah. The handwritten note, by the way, people, everyone knows I'm an advocate for U.S. mail still, but that is like Steven's saying and Karen's saying the same thing. Set yourselves apart. So let's say you do get granted an interview and maybe it's a first round. There's nothing wrong with you sending an actual note, with maybe a box of chocolate or something that, there's nothing wrong with that. Anything that can set you apart from, like Steven said, set you apart from the thousands of people that are applying to the same job as you. Anything that can set you apart.
With that too, it's like, I know like the best, getting a thank you note out, like right now, like things move quickly. The quickest way to get that out is by email, but doing that, like that's the instant thing and kind of what they expect. But if you do that, and then also even just shooting out a quick actual handwritten thank you note, let's say with multiple candidates interviewing at multiple companies, let's say that company, they like your thank you email is lost in the shuffle. They extend an offer to a candidate who has a better offer or just decides that role is not the right fit. But the same day that happens, your handwritten thank you note shows up in the mail and they're like, wow, we would have completely forgot about this, even though we interviewed him like 2 weeks ago, but now here's his handwritten thank you note showing up in the mail. We just had a declined offer. He fit what we were looking for. We just, maybe there was, I don't know, for whatever reason, they didn't move forward at that time, but then you're back at the top of their mind again. And they're not to say it's going to happen every time, but it could be another.
Well, you just never know, right? And they could have another job, or you can get a box of thank you notes at CVS or Staples or anything for short $10 and and some stamps. It's not, you don't have to, it's something classy, high quality and classy. Goes a long way. Let me just tell you, I've had people send them to me that I've interviewed, that we've done business. It goes a long way. And I send them. If anybody works for me, or these guys can attest, I'm always sending them gifts and notes and all kinds of things. So it goes a long way with people. We have a question, a wrap-up question here. Tracy asked if anyone has any questions before we end. Cheryl says, I don't know what to do about the open compensation question. I need a job, so I'm willing to unfortunately go low, but I don't know how low. Do we have anything to say there?
Always a tough one, but with how we do things and kind of how I operate with like clients and talking to candidates, like the best way to do it is to be straightforward, open, upfront, and honest about it. Like, don't say like, hey, like I need 60,000 or whatever it is, like whatever your number is, like say that, and then you get an offer for that. And it's like, well, actually I needed like 65 or whatever. Like, even if you do need a job, like that's where it comes back to like even going back and looking at what you need to cover your expenses and kind of your bare minimum, because like obviously like if it came down to it, you probably would take less, but you don't want to accept something that's going to be less than what you have to like cover from like just a basic needs perspective. And you also don't want to like sell your experience short and things like that too, because if you just undercut yourself, then sometimes clients may get like a sense of like, oh, like desperation and be like, well, maybe there's something like off or missing. This candidate's just willing to take anything. So, I mean, be confident with kind of like what your ask is and be able to kind of like back it up with your experience and like what you've done as well. And I mean, I think that goes a long way.
For sure.
I can add a negotiation tip to that is if they ask you about your salary, I always like to ask a question back. Well, what's the range? Not what are you guys paying? What is the range? They say it's open, then that's when you need to figure out, like Stephen was saying, what is your bottom dollar? What are you comfortable with taking? And then when you say that number, quiet, silent. Do not speak again until they speak. Because what I've done, unfortunately, in the past is I say the number, and then I say, but I'd love to work with your company, and then it just, you never get what you want. So make sure, and then if you don't get the salary that you want, try negotiating and benefits or bonus or whatever that is. But just keep in mind, like, they are asking you about your salary because they like you. So again, what Stephen was saying, it's the confidence behind it, and just making sure that when you do say a number, zip it.
So this also goes back to you guys, know your worth. We talk about that a lot on Coffee Chat, and both Stephen and Karen are saying, like, know your worth and don't be afraid to ask for what you want. You're not going to know unless you ask. So, and another negotiating tactic, go in high. If you can live with 60, tell them you need 65, tell them you need 70. That's still a thing, right? Go in a little higher than you want. That's a classic negotiation tool. And to know your worth, and like Karen's saying, zip it, like that's also like, don't flinch. Say your number, be confident in your number, be confident in your presence, and then shush. And don't weaken yourself by like second guessing yourself by saying, oh, but blah, 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 blah. Don't do that. Karen's right. You're devaluing yourself. That's the word I'm looking for. Don't devalue yourself. Another thing, if you're interviewing online, make sure you're making eye contact with people. We had a guy that interviewed with us, and he was answering his emails like he was not even looking at us, and he was looking for a decent salary from us to be one of our business development people. And honestly, he thought he was all that. And he went through the interview and he was like typing and answering emails the whole time, not even looking at us, which is a complete obvious turnoff. So, those of us that have been doing this for a long time, we're looking for the authenticity of you. We want to know really what makes you you. So we don't want you to present to us something that you think we want to see or hear. We want to know who you are, and we want to know your truth without, you rambling and sounding like you don't know what you're talking about and all that, like Karen was saying. So, have some concise stories that share your expertise in the way you've solved problems. Do your research on who's interviewing you, and do your research on the company that you're interviewing with. Because if you're like me, you're going to ask, you're going to say, what do you know about me? Or what do you know about the company? Or what have you heard? Or something like that, So you want to look to add value. You basically want to lead with what you believe you can bring to the company to add value to the company. Not looking to see what they can do for you as the lead in. Even if you are the optimal candidate that they are looking for, if you lead with adding value, no matter what you're doing in your life, you cannot lose. If you are striving to add value, value will be added to you. That's how the law of the universe works. Whatever you give away, you will get back. So in all of the tips and tricks and the to-dos and not to-dos, the bottom line in all of it is keep your mindset in a positive place. You are not going to attract the job that you want or the connections that you want or the people that you want to meet by being negative, pissy, and in a bad space. It's just not going to happen. People will want to stay away from you, and they will not want to talk to you, and they will feel that energy on you, and they will just be like, no, thank you. So, and energy is a thing. We interview a lot of people, the three of us. We talk about that a lot. We talk about the vibe that someone gave off, how we feel about them for a client or for ourselves, what we think about, you know, how they presented and what they said, and if they were talking out both sides of their mouth or they were being authentic and, you know, congruent. So these are important things. Old school values, you're never going to go wrong with that. You know, being a person that adds value, being gracious, saying thank you, thanking people for their time, those types of things, anything that can set you apart. Stephen, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I feel like this was a great conversation, great tips from all of us here, and hopefully that, yeah, you guys found it helpful. And yeah, I think our emails were put in the chat. So
yeah, I just put Karen's in, Stevens is in there. And obviously you guys know how to find me. Also, if you go to thecoffeechatshow.com and you scroll to the bottom of the page where it says you can work with Noelle one of two ways, and you click the Delta Hire banner, it will take you over to our site. You can see a little bit more information about Karen and Stephen. You can also find their LinkedIn profiles, and you can go and check them out there. Karen, what about you? Any final words of wisdom?
Final words of wisdom is that LinkedIn works. I found my job through Delta Hire with LinkedIn.
See that?
And it was because I manifested that I wanted to work in a place with people my age that were similar, remote, and here we are.
Here we are. All right, you guys, we hope that this was helpful. Tracy just posted the Delta Hire site in there also, so you can go and look these guys up. You can also, obviously, you can see me there. You can see me lots of different places, and you'll see me on Saturday morning. I think we'll do this again. Maybe we'll cover some different topics. We are thinking about doing an evening edition of the Coffee Chat Show twice a month, just to add value and give you different thoughts on coaching, training, work, leadership, all the different things that are more work focused and business focused than the morning Coffee Chat Show is. So we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody.